So we're just gonna recap on what we did in the other video. So what we're going to do is we're going to factor this fully, right? We're going to get the greatest common factor. We're gonna do our step 1. Always look for a greatest common factor. And then we need to see if there is an x squared term left over. And if there is, we need to factor again. So let's do step 1. So the greatest common factor, is there a greatest common factor in this? Well, yep, because normally if there's a number in the front, it means we can do a greatest common factor. So if we can find the factors for these, I am just going to put them over here. So the factors for 5 are 5 times 1. And for 5, there's still 5 times 1. And for 30, I'm just gonna assume that we're looking for a 5. So 5 times 6 is 30. So our greatest common factor is 5. So what we do is we bring the 5 out front and we put our leftovers inside the brackets. So 5 divided by 5 is 5, and there's still an x squared, minus 5 divided by 5, which is 5, and we still have an x. And 30 divided by 5 is 6, so negative 6. Perfect. So we've done step 1. Okay, now step 2. Is there still an x squared? Yep, there sure is. Oh, there should not be a 5 in front of there. Sorry, that should be a 1. Is there an x squared still there? Yep. So now we do our, I'm just going to do step 2 down here so we have more room. Step 2, our window method with this term. So let's put our x squared, our negative 6, and our, this equals negative 5x over here. So then we have to figure out what two things add together to give me negative 5 and multiply together to give me negative 6. So let's look at this. Things that multiply to get me negative 6. We can do negative 6 times 1. We can do 6 times negative 1. We can do 3 times negative 2. We can do negative 3 times 2. Right? These are all going to give me negative 6. So what happens when I add them together? Negative 6 plus 1 is going to give me negative 5. So I know that these are my terms. So I have negative 6x, don't forget the x, don't forget the x, and plus 1x. And then we can pull everything out. So we have an x and an x, plus 1 on this side, and a minus 6 on this side. And so this gives us x minus 6 and x plus 1. And then we bring this back up here and we put it in, because it's the exact same thing as this in factored form, right? We just found the factored form. So we have x minus 6 and x minus 1. And that is our fully factored form. Okay, we can do one more before we move on so these videos don't get super long. So let's take a look at number 3. Can we factor? Yes, we can, because there's a 3 in front. So what are the factors of 3? We have 3 times 1. That's all we got. Factors of 24. What are the factors of 24? Well, I'm just going to give it to us, and we can do 3 times 8. And the factors of 48 are, well, where is, I don't even know if would think I should know that by now. 3 times 16 gives us 48. My brain again is not working today, but that's okay. So 3 is our greatest common factor. So what we can do is we can take 3 out front. Can we take an x out front? We have an x here, and no x there, so no, we can't. So then let's put the remaining inside the brackets. So 3 divided by 3 gives me 1. And then I put the x squared. Minus. Remember, make sure that when you're putting the signs in, they make sense. So 3 divided by 24 gives me 8x plus 16. So we now take our standard form. So we've already done step 1. Now, step 2, we're going to do down over here, is we're going to take this and put it in the window form to factor it even more. Okay? So when we do that, we're going to do our window. And we put in x squared, 16, negative 8. And we need to find these here. So what things multiply together to give me 16? We can do 16 times 1. We can do 8 times 2. And these are probably going to, some of these are going to be negative. Oh. So I would give us negatives, sorry. Negatives. We can do negative 4 times negative 4. Right? So if this is going to end up being a negative number and this one's a positive number, you're going to be looking for 2 negative numbers. So negative 4 plus negative 4 gives me negative 8. And negative 4 times negative 4 gives me 16. So I know that these are negative 4x and negative 4x. And then we can pull our information out. So we have x, minus 4, minus 4. So our brackets are x minus 4, x minus 4. And then we bring it back up. I'm going to put 3 here. And, nope, I'm going to use the same one. So step 3 is to rewrite it in our factored form. Okay? So now what we're going to do is, you guys remember, I know this is scary looking, but we've actually already done this question in one of our previous videos. So when we did this in steps. So you have a picture over there, and we did step 1, where we got the y-intercept. Step 2 is we got our zeros. Step 3, we got our axis of symmetry. And remember, axis of symmetry is our zeros added together. So these two added together, and then it's divided by 2 to get our x value. And then our step 4 was to find our vertex. Right? So we took our zeros that we found and we plugged our x value into them to find our y value for our vertex. So we have our x value and we have our y value for our vertex, and we can write our vertex. And then afterwards, we took all of this information we just found and we plotted our points. So we're going to do the exact same thing. The only difference is we might have to factor at the very beginning, right? We will have to do our greatest common factor at the start. Okay, so when we're looking at this, we're going to do the exact same thing we did yesterday in the exact same steps. We're just going to add one thing, which we may have to factor one more time, right? We might have to find the greatest common factor. So our very first step that we did the other day was the y-intercept. So step 1, find the y-intercept, right? And we already know what the y-intercept is because it's given to us right there. So we're going to write our y-intercept is equal to negative 16, and then box it. And our step 2 is to find our zeros. But to find our zeros, we need to see first, do we have a greatest common factor in this? We sure do, because there's a number in front here. Usually that means we can factor it, right? We can find a greatest common factor. And so what we're gonna wanna do is when we do find the greatest common factor, we wanna make sure that we bring this negative out with it, because we want this part to look as pretty as possible, right? Our standard form to look as pretty as possible. And negative is not a very pretty thing to look at. So when we look at this, we know, I can do it up here. So some factors for negative, I would just say 2. Some factors for 2, 2 times 1, that's all we got. Some factors for 12, we have, I'm just gonna give it to us, we have 2 and 6, right? Because we have a 2 here and a 2 here. And some factors for 16, we can do 2 and 8. So we know that 2 is our greatest common factor. So we're going to bring the negative 2 out because we want to bring that ugly looking negative out. So we're going to do our little step 1 here. So we're going to bring 2 out front. And negative 2 divided by negative 2 gives us 1x squared minus, or I would say plus, because negative 12 divided by negative 2 gives us a positive 6, right? So if we take negative 12 divided by negative 2, a negative divided by a negative gives us a positive. Okay, and then negative 16 divided by negative 2, again, a negative divided by a negative gives us a positive. So we have plus 8, bracket. Right, so we've done our step 1 to find our zeros. So now that we have our standard form, we can now do step 2, which is our window method. All right, so let's get our window going here. And we plug our information in. So we have x squared in here. We can put our, I keep forgetting that x there. We put our 8 down here, and it equals 6x. So now we have to find some things that are going to give us 8, that multiply to 8. So let's take a look over here. So what are some things that multiply to 8? We can have 8 times 1. We can have 2 times 4. And do any of these, when they're added together, do any of these give us 6? So these 2 are going to give us 9. Doesn't work. These 2 are going to give us 6. So these are our numbers. So we then plug those into here. So we have a 2x, and remember to put our x's in, and a 4x. And then we can pull our information out. X, x, 2, and 4. So then we can put our zeros in here. So we have x plus 2, I'm saying these backwards, and x plus 4. But then we need to remember I had a third step on that other page to put these 2 together. So we have negative 2, x plus 2, and x plus 4. And our zeros are going to be when we take these out of the brackets, right? And when we take them out of the brackets, the sign switches. So negative 4 and negative 2. So our zeros, I'm going to write it in the same color, equal negative 2 and negative 4. And then our third step is to find the axis of symmetry. Right? Now remember, to find our axis of symmetry, we add our two zeros together. So we add them together, so -2 plus -4, and we divide it by 2. Apparently I can't write today. So -2 plus -4 is going to give us -6 divided by 2, which gives us -3. So then we write our axis of symmetry, so our x is equal to -3. Okay? And now we need to find our very last thing for our step 4, which is our vertex. So remember, when we find our vertex, we already have the x value for our vertex. So we sub this into our factored form. Okay, so we sub it into this factored form. So we take our -2, x plus 2, x plus 4, and then we plug our x value into it. So -2, -3 plus 2, -3 plus 4, and we get -2, and then -3 plus 2 is -1, -3 plus 4 gives me +1, and then I'm just going to continue over here. So -1 times 1 gives me -1. And then on our calculators, if we do -2 times -1, we're going to get a +2, right? So this is our y. So don't forget that we need to rewrite our actual vertex, because we have our x and we have our y. So don't just stop there. You need to write your vertex. So your vertex, it's always written x, y, is -3 and 2. And then box it. Always box your information, because it'll help you when you're plotting your stuff. So now we can go through and we can mark our spots. So we can do our y-intercept. So I have not labeled this, but that's okay. So we're going to pretend that our y-intercept is right there. And one thing you guys are going to note is that we can actually know that this is going to open down, because it's a negative at the start, right? We've learned that. So we've plotted our y value. Now we're going to go and we're going to plot our zeros. So our zeros are at -4. Give or take, we'll throw that here, and -2. I don't know why I'm going to +2, so we'll say that's about here. So we've done our zeros, we've done our y-intercept. Let's go to the axis of symmetry. So the axis of symmetry is at about -3, so it would be right in the center here. I'm just gonna say that this is -4, -2. And then we're going to plot our vertex. So our vertex is at -3, so right here, and it's up 2, 1, 2. And now we can actually draw our parabola. And I was going to get a nicer color, but I don't think my green is working. We can try it. So make sure that your parabola goes through all of the points. And we can get our other side. It's just not going to be pretty, but plain and simple, right? The only thing that we did different from yesterday is this greatest common factor step. That's it. That's the only difference.